Well, joining me now is Ireland's former Prime Minister Bertie Ahern, who, of course, with Tony Blair was one of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement. And let's just talk about that first of all. In terms of the peace in Northern Ireland, the settlement between London and Dublin, how important is it to maintain an open border for movement of people and goods?
Yeah, I think the first part, the movement of people, seems simple enough. From my understanding, from what British civil servants and Irish civil servants, the tens of thousands of people across the border every day, there doesn't seem to be a big issue, or with tourists. I originally thought that could be a problem with people coming in from Eastern Europe into Dublin Airport and going north, but that doesn't seem to be a problem. It's the customs union, and of course the customs union never came into the debate until January the 17th, when Prime Minister May raised the customs union issue. I think I understand why, but if you go Pascal Lamy, who is meant to be the world expert on WTO matters and borders, he has stated that if the border between the UK and Europe is our border on the island of Ireland, then you have to have custom controls. I mean, that's the stated position. So it will be very interesting this morning on that point, more than anything, what Michel Barnier says. I don't think that would represent a hard border if they do not find a solution to that point.
But presumably, I mean, if you have restriction on the movement of goods to control borders, that inevitably means restrictions on the movement of people. Otherwise, you could just have open smuggling.
Listen, there's been a tradition of that on the island of Ireland for many decades, and of course it could open up again. But I think any kind of border for goods would be considered a hard border. So the definition, as the people on the island of Ireland would see, that anything that goes back to the old situation would create a problem. So how they can find a resolution to that, I don't know. It'll be very interesting to hear it today. I do not think some people here have been saying that the British government should just drop the customs union bit. I don't think they can do that, because in fairness to Prime Minister May, the reason I'm sure she put in the customs union was that she would not be able to do new trade deals outside of the WTO if she remained in the customs union. So I don't think she can do that. So we're stuck with the customs union, but how does it affect the border? That's, I think, the major issue. I think most of the other issues, I can see ways around them. I can see compromises. You can see how the negotiations, but I do not see on the customs union how they can resolve that.
I mean, many Conservatives in Britain say, well, look, other countries, America, Japan, most of the rest of the world effectively trade with the European Union without being part of the customs union. So why should it be a problem for us?
Well, I think if you're stuck with the rules in the customs union of WTO rules. So let's say the British government want to do an agreement with India. They can't do that if the EU already have if they remain in the customs union. So their flexibility and their ability. Now, I don't think the British government realised that for a few months, but I think since January the 17th, it's part of the equation. I would have thought maybe there was some technological way of dealing with it, but Pascal Lamy, who I take it as his long years, has said no, that if it's the border, then you have to have controls. And maybe Michel Barnier has some bright thinking today, but I think it is a crucial issue for us. And of course, for the reason, Adam, that if we go back to borders, then you start destabilising what's delicately put together. And the border traditionally was the hotspot during the 1956-62 IRA campaign. Nearly all of the action took place on the border. So it's not just symbolic, it is a real dangerous issue for us. I take everybody's goodwill that nobody wants to create a problem, but if we don't find a clear resolution to the customs union on the border, then we have a big problem.
What do you think Michel Barnier could propose that would make this easier? Special status for Northern Ireland. Is that viable, do you think?
Well, others, I have to say, I said a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but others have said it as well. The former head of the Bank of England said, well, you can move the line of the border off coast, and then the checkpoint becomes a different location.
That, of course, would be very alienating for unionists in the north if they had a hard border with the rest of the UK.
Yeah, but the thing is, the border is not visible any longer. So if it was just for paperwork, that border would be in a different location. But it is probably the only way that can resolve it without creating enormous difficulties. I think unionists probably would be worried about it. So I think Michel Barnier has to be very careful that he doesn't solve one problem by creating another. I would be doubtful if he has a solution to this. He is going to address the issue today, but I think we'll take some time before we see this fully agreed.
Bertie Ahern, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, let's get the thoughts now from the Northern Ireland Secretary Peter Hain, Lord Hain, who joins me from Westminster.